I used to think every adult exaggerated when they complained about their parents refusing to respect boundaries. Then I bought my first house. Technically, it was a small place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. Just a comfortable home with a decent backyard and enough space for me to finally feel independent. My parents celebrated the purchase with me, helped me move furniture, and proudly accepted the spare key I gave them for emergencies. That was my first mistake. In my mind, an emergency meant fire, flood, earthquake, or maybe a medical crisis. In my parents' minds, an emergency apparently included running out of milk, being curious about my weekend plans, or simply feeling bored on a Tuesday afternoon. At first, their visits seemed harmless. I'd come home from work and discover my refrigerator reorganized, my laundry folded, my kitchen cleaned. Then things escalated. One Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of a vacuum cleaner. I stumbled into the hallway wearing pajamas only to find my mother cleaning my living room while my father watched television on my couch. Neither seemed remotely concerned that they had entered my house without warning. My mother glanced up and smiled. "Oh good, you're awake. We noticed your carpets needed attention." My father pointed at the television. "And your streaming subscriptions are still active. Excellent." I remember standing there wondering if I actually owned the house or if I was merely renting a room from my parents without realizing it. Unfortunately, the real problem began several months later. That was when I met her. She wasn't from my city. She wasn't from my country. Technically, she wasn't even from Earth. Humanity had spent years building diplomatic relationships with several friendly alien civilizations. Cultural exchange programs had become increasingly common, and that's how she arrived. She was intelligent, funny, curious, and possessed the kind of smile that could completely derail a conversation. Our first meeting lasted 3 hours. Our second lasted 5. By the third date, I was completely fascinated. She loved learning about human customs, though she often found them confusing. In return, she told me stories about her homeworld, its traditions, and its surprisingly complicated approach to relationships. Unlike many humans, her people valued privacy above almost everything else. Personal space was considered sacred. Individual homes were treated with enormous respect. Nobody entered without permission. Nobody. Whenever I explained certain human behaviors, she reacted with polite disbelief. Then she met my parents. Actually, met isn't quite the right word. They invaded. I had spent an entire week planning a perfect evening. The house was spotless. Dinner was prepared. Candles were lit. Soft music played in the background. Everything was going exactly as planned. We were sitting together on the couch laughing about a misunderstanding involving human pets and alien transportation laws when the front door suddenly opened. Without knocking. Without calling. Without warning. My parents walked inside carrying grocery bags. "Hello?" my mother announced cheerfully. My father waved. "We found a sale on frozen vegetables." The room fell silent. I felt my soul leave my body. My girlfriend slowly looked at the open doorway. Then at my parents. Then at me. Then back at my parents. Her expression suggested she was witnessing an extremely rare form of human insanity. My mother immediately began unloading groceries onto the kitchen counter. My father opened my refrigerator and started inspecting its contents like a government auditor. Meanwhile, my girlfriend sat frozen in place. Finally, she leaned toward me and whispered quietly, "Are we being robbed?" I nearly laughed. Unfortunately, my parents heard her. My father chuckled. "Of course not. We're family." As if that somehow explained everything. The evening never recovered. My mother asked dozens of embarrassing questions. My father offered relationship advice nobody requested. At one point, they started debating where future grandchildren might sleep during family visits. My girlfriend listened politely, but I could see the confusion growing. After nearly an hour, my parents finally left. The front door closed. Silence returned. I buried my face in my hands. When I looked up, she wasn't angry. She was simply amazed. "In your culture," she asked carefully. Is this normal? I stared at the door. Then I thought about the surprise visits, the rearranged furniture, the refrigerator inspections, the random appearances, the complete absence of boundaries. For the first time, I realized something important. No, this wasn't normal. And if I wanted any chance of building a future with the incredible woman sitting beside me, something had to change. The next morning, I picked up my phone and called a locksmith. The locksmith arrived exactly at 9 in the morning carrying a toolbox that looked large enough to contain spare parts for a spaceship. I opened the door and explained the situation. My parents won't stop letting themselves into my house. He nodded. Bad neighbors? Worse. His expression immediately turned sympathetic. Parents? I pointed at him. See? You understand. Apparently, I wasn't his first customer with boundary issues. While examining the locks, he asked a few questions about who possessed spare keys. I told him my parents had one copy. At least, I thought they had one copy. The locksmith's eyebrows slowly rose as the investigation continued. Within 15 minutes, he discovered evidence suggesting the key had been duplicated multiple times. That's odd, he said. How odd? He looked at me. On a scale from 1 to 10, this is a family barbecue turning into a police documentary. That answer concerned me. After several phone calls and uncomfortable conversations, the truth emerged. My parents hadn't kept a single emergency key. They had apparently distributed copies all over town. One went to my aunt. Another went to my cousin. A third went to a neighbor. Somehow my father's fishing buddy had one. For reasons nobody could adequately explain, my mother's bridge club president also had access. I stood in my living room trying to process the fact that half the neighborhood could potentially enter my house. The locksmith looked genuinely impressed. Your parents built a decentralized access network. It sounds less ridiculous when you say it like a computer system. It shouldn't. By noon, brand new high-security locks had been installed. The old keys were completely useless. For the first time since buying the house, I felt an unfamiliar sensation. Peace. That feeling lasted approximately 6 hours. The first warning came from my phone. My mother sent 17 text messages. The second warning arrived when my father called. 7 times. The third warning appeared in person. I was making dinner with my girlfriend when angry knocking shook the front door. I opened it. My parents stood outside. My mother looked betrayed. My father looked personally offended by modern security technology. You changed the locks? Mom demanded. Yes. You didn't tell us. I was afraid you'd talk me out of it. My father pointed dramatically at the door. This is family property. I paid for it. That's not the point. I was fairly certain it was exactly the point. The argument continued for nearly 20 minutes. My parents insisted parents should always have unrestricted access to their children's homes. I argued that adults deserved privacy. Neither side appeared interested in surrendering. Eventually my girlfriend stepped forward. She had remained quiet throughout the discussion, mostly observing human behavior the way scientists observe dangerous wildlife. On her world, family relationships were close and loving. But entering someone's home without permission was considered deeply disrespectful. She politely explained this cultural difference. My parents listened, nodded, then completely ignored everything she said. After they finally left, she stared at the closed door for several seconds. Your species is fascinating. That's one word for it. No, she replied with a laugh. On my planet, this situation would be studied in universities. I couldn't help laughing. For the first time in weeks, nobody interrupted dinner. Nobody entered unexpectedly. Nobody inspected the refrigerator. Nobody reorganized furniture. We talked for hours. We shared stories. We laughed until our sides hurt. At one point she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. For changing locks? For protecting something important. I knew she wasn't talking about the house. For the first time, I felt like I was building a real future instead of constantly defending it. Everything seemed perfect. The problem was that my parents had never accepted defeat in their lives. And they certainly weren't about to start now. 3 days later, an elderly neighbor stopped me while I was checking the mailbox. He smiled suspiciously. "So who's the visitor with the blue hair?" I blinked. "What? The alien woman." My stomach dropped. I had never mentioned her to him. As I walked back toward the house, another neighbor waved. "Nice dinner guests last night." Then another. And another. By the end of the afternoon, it became painfully obvious that someone was collecting information about my life. Someone was asking questions. Someone was reporting back. My parents might have lost their keys. But somehow they had found an entirely new way to keep tabs on me. And whatever they were building, it was spreading through the neighborhood faster than gossip at a family reunion. Over the next week, I discovered something both impressive and terrifying. My parents had accidentally created the most efficient gossip network in the neighborhood. They no longer had keys to my house, but apparently they had replaced physical access with human intelligence gathering. Everywhere I went, people knew things they absolutely should not have known. The elderly woman across the street somehow knew what takeout we had ordered on Friday. A man I barely recognized complimented me on a movie I had watched through my living room window. Even the dog walker seemed suspiciously informed about my schedule. The entire situation felt less like suburban life and more like I was the target of a very low-budget spy agency. My girlfriend found the whole thing hilarious. I, meanwhile, was slowly losing my sanity. One evening we sat together in the backyard discussing the situation. "They are watching us," I said. She nodded. "Definitely. They have recruited half the neighborhood." "Also definitely." I sighed. "What do we do?" A mischievous smile appeared on her face. That smile usually meant trouble. "On my world," she said, "when observers become annoying, we give them something entertaining to observe." The next morning, our counteroffensive began. We walked outside carrying a large cardboard box. Across the side, in giant black letters, we had written, "Warning, Quantum Egg Incubator." The box was completely empty. Within hours, rumors started spreading. 3 different neighbors asked whether we were breeding alien animals. One man wanted to know if the eggs could explode. Another asked if they were edible. Apparently nobody considered the possibility that the box contained absolutely nothing. The following weekend we escalated. My girlfriend spent an afternoon carefully carrying an invisible object through the front yard. She spoke softly to empty air. She occasionally nodded. At one point she pretended to feed something. Neighbors watched from windows. One person nearly drove into a mailbox while staring. By dinner time, stories about our mysterious invisible pet had spread across the entire neighborhood. Someone claimed it was dangerous. Someone else insisted it was adorable. Neither group had actually seen anything. The best part was hearing the information eventually circle back through my parents. Mom called me in a panic. "Do you own an alien tiger?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Fairly sure." Dad called later. "We heard you purchased some kind of quantum livestock." "I don't know what that means." "Neither do I." The misinformation became increasingly ridiculous. According to neighborhood rumors, I was secretly building a teleportation device. Then I was opening an interstellar restaurant. Then I was training alien pigeons for government work. Every story was more absurd than the last. Meanwhile, my girlfriend and I laughed harder than ever. The strange battle brought us closer together. Instead of being frustrated by the surveillance, we treated it like a game. Every day became a new challenge. Every rumor became a new joke. One evening we sat on the couch reviewing the latest neighborhood theories. My girlfriend was laughing so hard she could barely breathe. I found myself staring at her. Not because of the joke. Not because of the rumors. But because I genuinely couldn't imagine my life without her anymore. She noticed me looking. "What?" I smiled. "Nothing." She narrowed her eyes. "That was not a nothing look." I laughed. Maybe she was right. Maybe it wasn't. Because somewhere between fighting off my parents and confusing an entire neighborhood, I had fallen completely in love. Unfortunately, my parents were becoming more determined. The conflicting reports had driven them crazy. Every neighbor was telling a different story. Nobody knew what was real anymore. And when my parents couldn't get answers, they did what stubborn humans have done throughout history. They doubled down. 3 days later, I learned they had organized something extraordinary. And by extraordinary, I mean completely insane. My father had recruited volunteers. My mother had created schedules. Several neighbors had agreed to participate. The entire neighborhood spy network was preparing for one final operation. A coordinated stakeout. Their mission was simple. Watch my house. Observe everything. Discover the truth. What they didn't know was that the biggest surprise waiting inside that house had absolutely nothing to do with alien pets, quantum eggs, or secret experiments. And before the week was over, the entire neighborhood was going to witness something none of them expected. The day of the stakeout arrived with the seriousness of a military operation and the intelligence of a reality television show. I didn't know all the details at first. Later, neighbors happily filled in the gaps. My mother had distributed observation schedules. My father had assigned positions. Several retired residents volunteered immediately because they had apparently been waiting years for excitement. Lawn chairs appeared. Binoculars appeared. One neighbor brought snacks. Another brought a notebook. At least 6 people spent their Saturday preparing to uncover what they believed was a massive secret hidden inside my home. The truth was much simpler. I was planning to propose. For weeks I had been preparing the moment. No jokes. No fake rumors. No imaginary alien pets. Just something real. The backyard had been decorated with soft lights. A small table sat beneath the trees. Everything was peaceful and quiet. My girlfriend thought we were simply having dinner together. Meanwhile, an entire surveillance team watched from various locations around the neighborhood. The irony was almost beautiful. For months they had searched for mysteries. For months they had chased ridiculous theories. And somehow none of them had guessed the obvious truth. I was in love. As the evening sunlight faded, we sat together talking about everything we had experienced. The awkward first dates. The parental invasions. The locksmith. The gossip network. The invisible pet. The quantum egg incubator. Every ridiculous moment. She laughed until tears appeared in her eyes. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. "You know," she said softly, "when I first arrived on Earth, I expected humans to be confusing." "Only confusing?" I was trying to be polite. I laughed. She squeezed my hand. "But I learned something important." "What?" "Humans never stop fighting for the people they love." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Because she was right. Human beings were messy. We made mistakes. We crossed boundaries. We created unnecessary drama. But when something truly mattered, we fought for it. I looked at her. Then I reached into my pocket. Immediately, movement erupted throughout the neighborhood. Someone dropped binoculars. Someone stood up too quickly from a lawn chair. A dog started barking. The spy network sensed activity. Ignoring the chaos, I stepped forward and knelt. Her eyes widened. The entire world seemed to stop. I told her how much she meant to me. How she had changed my life. How every day with her was better than the day before. How I wanted to spend the future building something together. Then I asked the question. For 3 full seconds she simply stared at me. Then she smiled. And that smile contained more happiness than I thought possible. "Yes," she said. "Absolutely yes." The neighborhood exploded. Cheers erupted from multiple directions. People accidentally revealed every hiding place at once. Neighbors emerged from bushes. Others appeared from behind parked cars. One elderly man actually fell out of a hedge. My girlfriend burst into laughter. I couldn't stop laughing either. The stakeout had failed so spectacularly that it somehow became part of the proposal celebration. My parents slowly approached. For the first time in months, neither seemed interested in arguing. My mother looked emotional. My father looked embarrassed. After a long silence, Mom sighed. "We may have gotten a little carried away." "A little?" I asked. My father rubbed the back of his neck. "In our defense, the invisible pet thing seemed important. It wasn't real. We know that now." My girlfriend smiled kindly. Then she explained something from her culture. On her world, love wasn't measured by how tightly you held on to someone. It was measured by how much freedom you trusted them with. Family wasn't ownership. Family was respect. The words landed harder than any argument ever could. My parents listened quietly. For once, neither interrupted. Finally, my father nodded. "I suppose we forgot that." Mom smiled sadly. "We just didn't want to lose you." The truth hit me immediately. Everything they had done came from love. Misguided love. Overprotective love. Occasionally ridiculous love. But love nonetheless. I stepped forward and hugged them both. The tension disappeared instantly. By the end of the evening, every remaining spare key was officially returned. The neighborhood spy network was dissolved. Several members demanded retirement parties. The locksmith received an invitation to the engagement celebration after everyone agreed he had accidentally become the hero of the entire story. As the night came to an end, I stood beside the woman I loved and looked around at the people gathered together. Parents, neighbors, friends, humans and aliens laughing side by side. The whole situation was absurd. And perfect. Looking back, changing the locks was never really about a door. It was about boundaries. About trust. About growing up. My parents learned that love doesn't require unlimited access. I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't mean pushing family away. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, humanity proved something remarkable. We may be stubborn, nosy, dramatic, and occasionally incapable of minding our own business. But when we learn to respect each other, we become better families, better partners, and better people. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't walking through a door whenever you want. Sometimes it's simply knocking first.